Hello and welcome back to another Bible reading. It's our last one for the week.
It is, and we've had some fairly exciting stuff going on here with Jesus.
It's boom, boom, boom. Like I said, we with Mark,
Yep.
one after another. So we're going to have a similar feeding, feeding of the 4,000.
Which makes you think maybe we need to hear it again.
Need to hear it again, once again, because we already realized, if we remember yesterday, they did not understand the lesson.
No, and even after the four, he's going to chide the apostles for not getting it. So we're still not there.
They need time.
They do, and we do too.
Yeah, discipleship takes
He's
time.
patient.
Yes, and Jesus is patient. So in those days, when again a great crowd had gathered, they had nothing to eat. He called his disciples to him and said to them, I have compassion on the crowd. Once again, that has defined Jesus' ministry. I have compassion.
It's not a detached thing. These are people, and he feels for them.
Yeah, I mean, you ever see someone who's like homeless? Or you ever see, me and Ashley went out for our anniversary trip. We were in Asheville, and in Asheville has a lot of homeless people. There were a couple that looked like they were professional, you know.
And they're out there.
You know, but there were some that we truly felt bad for.
A
So
lot
one
of
guy
them mentally ill.
he was
They're
taking
falling
something
through the
apart,
cracks.
and you could tell he was trying to take the copper off this stuff so he could sell it and try to.
Yeah.
And Ashley's like, we need to get him a coffee.
Yeah.
She felt compassion.
The system has given up on a lot of these folks who are mentally ill, maybe struggling with drugs, and they don't have a way out, and they've fallen through the cracks. And, you know, it's not just, you guys need to get a job. Some of them, that's true, and some of them are professional panhandlers. But our culture has created a way for people to get in that shape and not giving them a real good way out.
Yeah, and I think sometimes we forget that these are Jesus's created beings.
Made in the image of God.
He made them. They're his children. He loves them, no matter what they've done.
We need to find ways, I say we, in things like this, how can we help?
Yeah.
What can we do? And sometimes it's a temporary thing, like what you did, but to get them on. But what is the big solution to give as many people as possible a chance to get back into life and be people who can appreciate themselves in their life?
Yeah. And here's what Jesus is going to do. I have compassion on the crowd because they have been with me now 3 days and have nothing to eat. And if I send them away hungry to their homes, they will faint on the way.
These people have been with him.
You know, if anyone ever complains about me preaching too long into the fellowship
You're
meal,
not about to faint on the way to the parking lot, probably.
and some of them have come from far away. And once again, these people are coming to hear Jesus too, so they are coming with an intention. His disciples answered him, how can one feed these people with bread here in this desolate place? Once again, remember, they were in a desolate place before.
Hello.
Jesus went off to a desolate place. He fed 5,000. Now we're in a desolate place, and there's 4,000. There's less than before.
Yeah, it's just hard to figure out and to go with who he is. He's just got so much going for him that we revert to our usual mode, and you can't do that with Jesus.
Yeah, and we're actually making a transition. I was reading one person who kind of sees the first 8 chapters or first 7 chapters as who is Jesus, and we're kind of seeing, you know, people answer that question, who he is. But now we're going to start transitioning into, especially with Peter's confession, who is he as the Messiah?
Yes, because we got to get to that level or we're not there yet.
Yeah, if Jesus is just a good man doing good works, he's got nothing for us besides what he had to offer while he was here.
Yes. It's like Lewis said about him, that the options aren't, one, who was a good man. No, that's not one of the options. He's got to be the Messiah or he's a nut or a liar.
Yeah, because if he's not the Messiah, and you hear some of the Pharisees were right then. He's a blasphemer.
Exactly.
So, all right. I'll stop now. Keep interrupting. Okay. I will send them away hungry, or they'll faint. And the disciples answered, how can one feed these people with bread here in this desolate place? He asked them, how many loaves do you have? They said 7. He directed the crowd to sit down on the ground. He took the 7 loaves, having given thanks, he broke them, gave them to disciples to set before the people, and they set them before the crowd. They had a few small fish. Having blessed them, he said that they also should be set before them. And they ate and were satisfied. They took up the broken pieces left over, 7 baskets full. There were about 4,000 people, and he sent them away. And immediately he got into the boat, and with his disciples went to the district of Dalmanthua. The Pharisees came and began to argue with him, seeking from him a sign from heaven to test him. What did he just got get done doing.
Would it be a sign?
And once again, one of the things you've realized with Mark, Jesus can't get away by himself because everybody's seeing and hearing about these signs
Sign.
bringing their daughters and their kids and people who have blood diseases. They're coming to Jesus, and the Pharisees, we want more.
And we get an inner Jesus moment here.
Yeah. And he sighed deeply in his spirit and said, "Why does this generation seek a sign? Truly I say to you, no sign will be given to this generation." He let them go, and he left them, got into the boat again, and went off the other side. The ultimate diss. I'm gone. Peace out.
Mm-hmm.
Now, they had forgotten to bring bread. They had only one loaf with them in the boat. So there's probably some time between this last one.
Undoubtedly.
Or they left the 7 baskets with the people.
Yeah, which they may have done.
And they just left one loaf with them. But is it enough?
It's always enough with Jesus, isn't it?
He cautioned them, saying, "Watch out. Beware of the leaven of the Pharisees and the leaven of Herod." And they began discussing with one another the fact that they had no bread. Jesus, aware of this, said to them, "Why are you discussing the fact that you have no bread? Do you not perceive or understand? Are your hearts hardened? Having eyes, do you not see? Having ears, do you not hear? Do you not remember? When I broke the 5 loaves for the 5,000, how many baskets full of broken pieces did you take up?" They said to him, 12. "And 7 for the 4,000. How many baskets full of broken pieces did you take up?" And they said to him, 7. And he said to them, "Do you not yet understand?"
So they knew facts, but they hadn't put it together to get the conclusions they needed to have. And boy, we can be just like that, can't we?
Yeah, and that's one of the dangerous parts about knowing Jesus and knowing Jesus.
Yes.
The difference between those two statements.
He did that, but what else is there?
Yeah.
Okay, am I up?
It's
I
you're
can't
up.
remember. Okay.
You're up.
They came to Bethsaida, and they brought a blind man to Jesus and implored him to touch him. Taking the blind man by the hand, he brought him out of the village, and after spitting on his eyes, another one of those things, laying his hands on him, he asked him, "Do you see anything?" And here's the 2-part miracle. The only one of them there is, but it's a theological thing. He looked up and he said, "I see men, and I see them like trees walking around." Then again, he laid his hands upon his eyes, and he looked intently and was restored. He began to see everything clearly, and he went to his home saying, "Do not even enter the village." I think what's going on here, and we just talked about it, is they've got they see some things.
Yeah.
But they really don't see the picture clearly.
This is the application of the spiritual message Jesus is trying to get to his disciples. Because once again, in John, he uses the blind man to talk about how the Pharisees are blind and the blind man actually has eyes to see. Mm-hmm. Here, his disciples, they're only seeing certain things, the things they want to see. You've got to have full vision, right?
They're impressed by the things, but they don't extrapolate beyond them.
Yeah, they don't see the full picture.
Peter's confession, here we got that. This is a big moment. In both Matthew and Mark, we're transitioning into some other things.
Yep.
Jesus went out along with his disciples to the villages of Caesarea Philippi. On the way, he questioned his disciples, saying to them, "Who do people say that I am?" And they told him, saying, "Well, John the Baptist, others say Elijah, others one of the prophets." And he continued by questioning them, "But who do you say?" So, this is the confession in Mark. It doesn't really matter at the end of the day who anybody thinks Jesus is. Who do I think he is?
Yeah. And it really doesn't matter, as we're going to see, what you say about Jesus, like with Peter. Mm-hmm. But if you don't have the full vision, right, as the blind man we're going to see, even Peter, he's blinded by still what he thinks Jesus is or who he thinks Jesus is, what kind of Messiah he's coming to be. And that's what we're going to start transitioning to into Mark. What kind of Messiah is Jesus? Is he an earthly king where you need to defend him and fight?
No, he's much more than that.
Much more than that.
And this is going to get kind of stark.
Yeah.
And he began to teach them that the Son of Man must suffer many things and be rejected by the elders and the chief priests and scribes and be killed. And here's the part they don't hear. And after 3 days, rise again. He was stating the matter plainly. Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him. This is so classic. But turning around and seeing his disciples, he rebuked Peter and said, "Get behind me, Satan, for you're not setting your mind on God's interests, but man." Now, when Peter says, what he says. It's kind of a Jewish idiom that means, God's not going to let this happen to you. Don't
Yeah.
talk like that. But yeah, he is going to let it happen to him, and he better. So that, as you said, we've got to take the whole 9 yards and understand that whatever's there is necessary. If I don't understand it, then I need to start trying to figure it out. Then he summoned the crowd and his disciples and said to them, if anyone wishes to come after me, he must deny himself, take up his cross and follow me. So this is entry-level stuff.
Well, we just transitioned from coming to Jesus. This is what we've seen all in Mark chapter 8
Let's come, now let's follow.
for healings and miracles. But what do all those people do? They eventually go away.
Yes.
Now, Jesus, most of the time, tells them to say nothing, besides the one person who's in the non-Jewish community. He says, go and tell them about the mercy. But most of the time, it's be quiet.
Yes.
But because what Jesus is wanting, he's not wanting his reputation to just be a miracle
All the
worker.
brouhaha and to-do, all the crowds clamoring over healings and getting fed. He wants more than that.
It's one thing to be amazed by Jesus.
It
It's
is.
another to follow Jesus.
And we see that from time to time in transitions, like we'll see it in John, where people are all over him, and then he starts letting them know, well, here's what that means, and they think, we're out of here.
I'm not touching that with a 10-foot pole.
No. So if anyone wishes to come after him, they're supposed to deny themselves, take up their cross. When denial means denial. It means he's in charge, we're not. Whoever wishes to save his life will lose it, and this is one of the most frequently said things, it's even in John, where whoever wishes to save his life will lose it, but whoever loses his life for my sake and the gospel's will save it. Isn't that a paradox and a half?
Yeah. I mean, all these people are being saved physically.
Mm-hmm.
And yet Jesus is talking about salvation in a very spiritual sense.
Eternity.
Yeah, and if you want to save it, first you got to lose it.
Yeah.
And that goes back with all your physical. Why did people come to Jesus with physical ailments? They lost something.
Yes.
They were less than something. They were
wanted
missing
to
something.
live a few more years.
You need to miss something. You need to lose something for Jesus to come in and fill your life.
Yes. Sounds paradoxical,
But it works.
it's not. Yes, it works. For what does it profit a man to gain the whole world, forfeit his soul? A rhetorical question. What will a man give in exchange for his soul? For whoever is ashamed of me and my words in this adulterous and sinful generation, the Son of Man will also be ashamed of him when it comes in the glory of his Father with his holy angels.
Read 9:1 too, because it goes well. It
Yeah,
goes.
one of those things. And Jesus was saying to them, truly I say to you, there are some of those who are standing here who will not taste of death until they see the kingdom of God after it's come with power. And that ought to be at the end of the previous chapter.
Yeah, and interesting that Jesus has the kingdom coming with power in the same discussion as he's talking his death and resurrection.
Because he did say he would be raised.
Yeah, and after his, and it's only I was in the middle of a study with somebody when I mentioned the fact that the kingdom, the true kingdom, the messianic kingdom, could not have happened until after the resurrection of Jesus, and ultimately until the power comes on high in Jerusalem in Acts chapter 2. And he's like, wait a minute, I thought Jesus brought the kingdom. Well, he did, but
Yes and no.
yeah. And once again, how do you define that? The kingdom of God is always reigning.
Yeah, or it's
under
always
the
there.
Jewish system.
But that messianic thing that's been from the prophets and all the way back to the garden will not find its full realization on earth until after the tomb is empty.
Yeah, and Jesus, even though when he's walking on earth, he is not king over the kingdom at that time.
No, he has not. The Father has not as yet turned it over to him. And all throughout, John especially, he's talking about this is because of the Father, this is because of the Father, this is because of the Father. He's in charge. And it's not until he ascends that the Father says, I'm putting you over all of this but myself.
Yeah, and interestingly enough, Jesus is talking about losing his own life, and then he's telling us to lose our life.
So he doesn't ask us to do what he wasn't willing to do himself,
Yeah.
and even in a much bigger way.
And he literally lost his life.
Literally.
He's just telling us to give up some of these things that we're attached to.
He has to pay the penalty for all of us. We're just giving up ourselves.
Yeah, so this is a good transition. Next week, we'll probably do some review because I think this is a good foundation
Yeah,
for
set the
chapter 9 and
stage.
10. And chapter 10 is going to come with some of our most fundamental, I think, of the kingdom teaching.
Yes.
Same thing we did in Matthew.
Yes.
So anyway, that's Mark chapter 8.
Yes, it is.
We love you. God bless.
Bye-bye.